We lost you, Lauren. Are you there? Are you done?
Although I guess if we're going to be broadcasting this, I should make a better rhetorical choice here for my background. I feel like I'm in a prison or something here. I don't know. So now
Kind of looks like that, Brian.
maybe I'll use how about like Michael Jackson?
There you go.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to try to add Lauren again in just a second because she was there and then she disappeared. But essentially what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to have, I'm noticing that that's a wonderful we're going to try to have a little hangout. We have several state teachers here from 2013, and we're going to have kind of an open question and answer session so that you can find out about education in all across our country and what's going on. So we have Brian, and he is from Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure, yes. I'm Brian Curtin. As Katie said, I'm out in Chicago, Illinois. I teach at a high school called Schaumburg High School, and I teach English here. And I've been teaching for 11 years now.
Thanks, Brian. Welcome. And so we have Andrea, and she's from North Dakota.
Hi, guys. My name is Andrea Noonan. I was an English middle school teacher for about 8 years, and this is my second year as a technology integration specialist. So I help teachers and kids implement technology in the classroom. Here's my volume.
It's great, actually. I think it's very good. And then we have Lauren Exman, and can you hear us, Lauren? Yes, no. We have Lauren Ekman from Georgia, and she is having a tough time, it looks like. She's not being able to connect. And she is joining us from Georgia. She teaches for the Academy for the Blind, and I'm going to see if I can. Here, looks like she's trying to get with us again. We're still missing Danielle. I'm waiting for Danielle to join, so maybe I'll try to add her one more time real quick.
Hey, Lauren, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I'm finally in. Can you hear me?
Hey.
We can. We were just introducing ourselves and talking about what we teach and kind of our background.
All right. Are you ready for me?
We're ready.
My name is Lauren Ekman, and I teach at the Georgia Academy for the Blind. I've been here for 11 years. It's the only school where I've ever taught. I came and did my student teaching here. I have a bachelor's degree in English education at Wesleyan College in Macon, Georgia. I have a master's in visual impairments and special education from the University of Louisville. And I'm currently all but dissertation at Nova Southeastern University in special education.
Thanks, Lauren. So let's go ahead and start with questions. So do I have a volunteer to start with questions that you might have for these lovely educators? All right. So I see David's hand shoot up, and I saw Kelly. Let's go ahead. I'm going to kind of run back there and get close to the microphone with David's baby. So David, what is your question?
It's kind of a two-part question. Lauren, was it hard to differentiate your instruction working at the blind school? And what's the biggest challenge working there?
Well, first of all, has anyone there heard of person-first language? Anybody? Yeah. In the visual impairment world, VI, we actually don't call it the blind school, and I'm not meaning to get on to you, but the school itself cannot see, so it's the school for the blind, and my children are not blind children, they are children who happen to be blind. As far as differentiating for them, when I first started, it was extremely difficult for me because I had no background in special ed. I never planned to be a teacher of the blind or visually impaired, and I myself am hearing impaired. So I learn in a totally different way than they do. But as time went on, I had the greatest teachers possible, and those were my students. And I asked them what sorts of things worked for them. And I was able to learn as I went. And when I finally got into coursework for special ed, it really helped. Now I have students in classes where I might have some who are totally blind, some who are partially sighted, and anywhere in between, some that read above grade level, and all the way to a student who's in 12th grade who only reads at pre-primer. And so you just have to learn what to do to help each of them access the curriculum and to experience success. And quite frankly, talking to them about their needs is one of the greatest things, because it also helps them to learn self-advocacy. And we don't want to raise a generation of what I call PBBs, poor blind babies. We want them to learn to be very articulate, self-actualized students who are able to make decisions and choices in their life and to be able to vocalize them to others. And I don't remember what the second half of your question was. Can you repeat, please?
But, so he wanted to know what the biggest challenge was for you.
The biggest challenge for me, I walked into a unique situation. My school did not have a high school English teacher for over a decade. The social studies teacher and the science teacher were each teaching a few language arts classes, but there's a nationwide shortage still of teachers of the visually impaired. They were very happy to see me when I came to ask if I could do my student teaching here. So I, as a first-year teacher, had to build an entire program. I had no textbooks. I had no materials. I did not know how to read Braille. And so just learning how to create a program from scratch was a major challenge, but I think that it helped longer in I figure things out on my own. There is no other English teacher here. I'm it. I am the department. So I had no help really those first few years. The other challenge that we face being a residential school is that most of the time we never meet our students' parents. A lot of our kids travel up to 6 hours rather, every week to get to school. And so their parents usually don't make the trek down with them. Even for IEP meetings, we never see the parents. And it's hard to create that meaningful relationship with them to get them on board. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we face here at the Academy.
Thanks, Lauren. So I'm going to buzz over here to Kelly. And Kelly had a question.
Do any of you feel under pressure after being named Teacher of the Year?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Sure. She asked, did any of you feel added pressure after being named Teacher of the Year? Does one of you want to start first?
I can start. Thanks for the question. I think that there's definitely been an added pressure being named Teacher of the Year, because I think there's, obviously with the name, there's a conception that, you know, you are the best teacher, which is kind of silly to think. But just more that you represent a large population of teachers and you're trying to do the best you can. That being said, you go into the classroom every day and make mistakes, and I really think that as long as we're learning from those mistakes and growing, that's what we have to do as teachers. But I've definitely felt that pressure.
Yeah, I'd say also just kind of one of the great things about being in an environment, in a school environment, is that you get pretty close with a lot of the teachers that you work with. So I think they feel pretty comfortable kind of calling you out every time you make a mistake, and you do make a lot of mistakes. So it kind of gives them the opportunity to be like, hey, Teacher of the Year, I thought you knew everything, which of course, you know, I don't know why they say that. Maybe because, you know, certainly not because I tell them that I know everything. So, yeah, it comes with some added pressure. But seriously, I think that just being a teacher in general, I think you'll all come to understand that it's a monumental sense of responsibility that you have every day. That you're working with children and you're working with the singular child, perhaps, that these sets of parents have. And so when you are having those moments where you're really reflecting on the monumental nature of your job, it can be really stressful. So I would say that having been designated as a teacher of the year is, I would say, was not as much pressure as I felt my first year teaching. Like that sense of responsibility alone, with all the kids looking at me, that was a lot of pressure. I think recently with this designation, it was certainly, there was some pressure added to it, but I felt like I was a little more well equipped for that added pressure.
Do you have anything to add to that question, Lauren, or do you think they've got it covered?
I think that there's always pressure as an educator, especially when you're outside of the school environment, to make sure that you are the ambassador for your profession. People know that you're a teacher. They look at you, and quite frankly, I know we don't like this word, but people judge you based on your behavior. And so there was always that in the back of my mind during my teaching career. But as soon as I was designated as a teacher for my state, it really upped my level of awareness of everything that I said in public, how I dressed, how I talked, interacted with people, because I wanted to make sure that at all times I was representing my profession the way that it deserved to be portrayed to the rest of the world.
Thank you. I'm going to take just a real quick break. I want to try to add Danielle one more time. For some reason, she did not pop up. So, see if I can get her in there. I don't know. I feel badly because I can't. Any idea? Yeah. Oh, we'll try it again. It just. Maybe we can figure it out. We'll see if it works. So while we're waiting to see if she comes in, and maybe I'm doing something wrong, I don't know. But is there another question that we have? Right here.
As English teachers, how do you keep the English daily lessons fun and engaging for students?
Did you guys hear that one?
No.
One more time.
Your daily English lessons fun and engaging for students.
I'm sorry, I still could not understand the question.
Yeah.
So it was, how do you make your daily English lessons fun and engaging for students?
Fun and engaging. Oh, okay. I'll jump in real quick if you guys don't mind.
Go ahead.
And this is just lessons in general, or did you specific English lessons? Was English one of the words in there, or am I putting that in my head?
English classroom. English classroom.
Okay, great. Okay, I didn't know if that was just the English teacher in me, just assuming you were saying lesson. I'd say, okay, so I'm going to answer this question first just sort of with a simple response. It's really complicated, and it's really hard, obviously, to make lessons engaging for kids. That's why we all, of course, get paid big bucks. But, you know, part of it is just really trying your best to empathize with kids. Like, what do you think kids would really enjoy, and what would they find engaging? And I think when you just start by asking that question, you start to kind of eliminate some things, like, and maybe even not even going as far as thinking about kids, but even yourself. So, for example, would it be engaging that, as a 15-year-old, to sit and listen to someone lecture for 50 straight minutes? You know, probably not. So that's obviously on the far spectrum. Anything that seems to really engage them through a variety of learning techniques, I think that's another way that we can really make our lessons engaging. So am I creating a lesson that allows kids to get up and move? Am I allowing them to get hands-on? Am I allowing them to play with technology? Am I allowing them to think critically, to debate? So really just varying the skills that they're working on, and then the modality that they use in order to work on those skills. And that variety will, I think, in and of itself make it pretty engaging. So long as the kids always know what it is that they're trying to do at the end of this lesson. What are they trying, what skill are they trying to work on? What do they need to know at the end of it? So if that's clear, the modality can be as varied as you can imagine. And really, with all the resources that we have access to right now, you don't have to come up with all of them in your own head. I mean, I can jump online and I can find a great engaging lesson for anything that I'm trying to teach on a daily basis. So So it's easier now than it was, I think, 10, 15 years ago. But yeah, I'd say in general, just trying to make sure that you're constantly varying your strategy, varying your modality. That's the easiest way to keep kids engaged.
I would agree with everything that Brian said. I would also add that as long as you can connect kids to those concepts, to get them to see that this isn't some vague idea, but that it changes their life or impacts their life in some way, I think that's really important. And like he said, to ask the kids how they feel about it, how they would like to learn it. And then also just to make sure that you have a variety of choice. So to not say that we're only doing it this certain way because I said so, to give them some choice in the matter and let them kind of run with it and see what they come up with, because a lot of the times they're going to surprise you and really open your ideas up into a broader spectrum of what could really happen with an assignment or with a task.
Thank you.
I would add, because everything they've said is excellent. In my room, I do something called reaching them through relevance, and I let my kids give me homework, because I realized at about age 25 that I was an old fart to them, and that my cultural references were not the same as theirs. I love Downton Abbey, I listen to classic rock, and I read transcendental literature. I'm not exactly gangsta or cool to them. So they give me homework. I have watched more awkward Secret Life of the American Teenager, oh dear Lord, when Jersey Shore was on. I let them bring me music, books, movies, anything. No judgment is passed publicly to them. I might think it in my head, but I don't say it aloud. And then when we're discussing difficult concepts in the literature, I have a common language with them because I have a common cultural foundation. So we can make comparisons if they're really not understanding something. And Romeo and Juliet, for example, they all know Bella and Edward. And you can pull them in that way. It makes it fun and engaging. So that's my thing, is let them give you homework. Fair is fair, after all.
I like that too, because I think what Lauren's getting at is even like just building relationships, and I love the way that she does that. I'm sure it's one of the million ways that she does that, Andrea as well. But when you build those strong relationships with kids, there's a higher likelihood that they'll be engaged with whatever it is that you're doing in the classroom. Which, Lauren, I should also say that I just learned what turn up meant.
Oh. By the way, urbandictionary.com is your best friend, because your students' slang is going to evolve at such a rapid pace that you can't keep up with it. And so they also give me vocabulary words that I have to look up on urbandictionary.com and use in sentences. It's fun, and they know that I care because I spend the time to do it, and that's meaningful to them.
Great. Thank you, guys. That was a great answer, a great collection of answers. So what is our next question? Got Kelly over here.
How has technology changed during your teaching career, and were you provided training to use the new technology?
Did you guys get that one?
Yes.
I'll start. I think technology has changed drastically. If you go into a school and they don't have one-to-one, you feel like they're behind in some way. And yet a lot of our school districts don't have the ability to have a one-to-one ratio with technology and kids. I think probably the biggest change has been that access. So not only are kids accessing technology all the time at school, but they're doing so at home as well. And so you have all these tools that you can choose from and all these new things that you can do, and we have to be able to teach kids how to use them and then model how to use them appropriately. So that's been a struggle.
I'll jump in. I remember when I was student teaching, this is now back in 2003, and I remember if I wanted to show a video clip of some sort, that you had to go to the library and check out the TV with the VCR on the cart. And I mean, this is 2003. It's not like this is 1983, but that was just the nature of technology at that school. I fast forward to today, or I should say 3 years ago, I volunteered to pilot our one-to-one program, and now Today, every student in our school has an iPad. So the device doesn't really matter, though, because whether it was a VCR or a laptop computer or a desktop or the iPad, whatever, they were all tools. And really, what I found remarkable about the fact that every kid has access to that tool is that it's really opened up a whole nother world of access to information. And so now it's not so much about what the teacher knows and what the teacher can teach you, but it's what the kids can discover on their own. And that's really what the iPad has done for them. Technology can create barriers from learning sometimes too. And so when that happens, you got to take the technology and put it aside and have a different way of learning. But it can open up a whole other world of learning, of creativity, of problem solving. I mean, I'll just use today as an example where, you know, I'm sure Katie's hooking everything up. She's very tech savvy. You know, a little glitch here. All of a sudden, she's engaging in her problem solving skills. You know, like it's an opportunity to develop a skill that's really, really important in the 21st century. So I'm seeing both students and teachers alike. They're starting to realize that maybe that particular skill is not where it needs to be in this world. People are looking for employees in any industry. They're looking for people who are going to be able to see a problem and resolve it. Technology creates that kind of opportunity as well. Quite a bit going on.
And since you bring up Katie, you know, when you think about what we're doing right now, I just had a Skype call with people from Seattle yesterday, and just the fact that we can connect with so many different people through different modalities across so many cultures, I think that's a huge factor in our education has now become global, whereas before, you know, it was just your school and your district and your town and your state.
And just kind of bringing that back and connecting that with what we have going on here. This is also an example for you. You guys know college students and you're talking with other teachers, but there are plenty of offers out there that would be willing to connect with your classroom and something that I can show you along. Or you can maybe connect with another classroom from across the country and do a real out and have an online discussion via Moto. So with technology, you can really use it to connect yourself and your students with people from all over. So keep that in mind.
In my world, technology has just exploded. In the visual impairment world, when I entered the profession 11 years ago, my students had Perkins Braillers, which are like an old-timey typewriter, that's their equivalent, and a brand new device called a Braille note taker, and the only thing that it did was word process. And it had a very bad robot-sounding voice to it that annoyed the children, and they really didn't want to use it to learn. Now, my students can do anything that anybody else can do. We have screen reading programs so that they can navigate the internet, do email, they Facebook, they tweet, they do it all. Cell phones, the iPhone has been amazing. It can now hook up with Bluetooth to a Braille entry device with refreshable Braille so they can read as they type in new information. It's just opened so many doors to them, not only educationally but in the career fields as well, because they're not just relegated to simple tasks anymore. They can now use the same technology that everyone else does because we have such great speech output and Braille input devices now.
I'd maybe add just one more thing, and it kind of piggybacks off what Lauren is saying, that students with disabilities now maybe have a better advantage than they did before, but I think all kids we're moving to that phase where we're expecting students to be creators, and that's a big change, where before, you know, they were just learning basic facts and sometimes writing and sometimes creating things, but now we're really expecting them to do that. And not only that, but take the information that they find and curating it or changing it in some way and then sharing it out, which is a pretty powerful thing to be able to do.
So what other questions do we have up here?
I think we already heard from others, but what has been the biggest challenge for the art teaching?
So we heard from Lauren already. She talked to us a little bit about her biggest challenges, but Ronnie would like to know from
Brian and Andrea, what have been your biggest challenges as educators?
Biggest challenges, educators. I'd say there are some challenges that have evolved. I'd say one of the challenges that I realized quite early in my career is that you get into the profession because you're passionate about your content area, but more importantly, you're passionate about people and kids learning. And what's really hard is when you get to situations where kids or their families or their parents don't care as much as you do. So there's a part of you that feels like, well, that's just something I kind of got to get over, but it's a challenge that you don't really want to give up on. And so it's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle to get kids to care about something. And when you see students, and it's not like it's rampant, but when you see students who are not engaged or have something going on at home that doesn't really allow them to be engaged in the classroom or to care as much as you'd like, well then, that's a challenge that I think is an important one for you to face. But like I said, my challenges, I feel, have kind of evolved. And to me, the challenges evolve because of your sort of a larger, more global awareness of what's going on in education. So just in the last couple of years now, it seems like the challenges are or have broadened. So you're thinking about now you're thinking about things like, what kind of funding do I have for technology in my classroom? You're thinking about challenges involving administration and policies that might permit or restrict certain access to information that you'd like, or access to technologies, or even taking a classroom to like on a field trip or something. So it's like all of a sudden like policies, you become more aware of that. So I mean the challenges are abundant, but I think that's part of why we choose to be teachers, because we're the type of people that enjoy a challenge, and it's kind of become it becomes something that drives you, I think.
Katie, can you tell me your students, what year are you guys in as far as your education?
So we have quite a variety. We have some students that are currently student teaching right now. And one way you're student teaching. And then we have some students that are doing their level 3, so they will be student teaching next semester. You guys want to wave? They're kind of wave over the corner. There's someone there. And then we also
I noticed that the student teachers are the ones with the caffeine in front of them, I think. That about right?
That's about right, yeah.
Okay.
And then we also have students that are more in their junior years, and so they're getting ready to start their level 3s next semester. So we have kind of a wide variety.
Sure.
And we do have a group, thank you for reminding me, we'll have a group of professors and instructors and deans in the back joining us as well. Yeah,
There they are. Thanks. I was just checking because they have to sit in the back.
Yeah.
When you talk about challenges, of course, the first year teaching, like Brian said, is one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And I happened to get a job in an ELL classroom, which wasn't where I was trained to be, but 6 different preps, and there's always a major concern in that population. There's a major concern every day, so trying to keep my head above water and trying to figure out what these kids needed to know and how I could get them there, and how to help them with all those social issues that they were also experiencing on top of education, I think was the biggest challenge. And so I hope you're excited for your first year. I hope you're having a good time student teaching, or you're looking forward to student teaching. Take it all in and get all that experience down, and you'll be all set. You'll be better than I was for sure.
all right, Lauren. Oh, we already heard from Lauren on this question. So what other questions do we have? Let's run across the room here. All right, Kim.
Okay, so this is for all of you. What advice do you have for future teachers that make our first year successful?
So did you hear that one?
Barely.
Yeah, barely.
So she said, what advice do you have for these first-year teachers to make their first year of teaching successful? If they could do anything, what should they do?
I would say definitely connect with as many other teachers as you can. So you can watch them teach, you can observe them, you can ask them questions. They can help you with curriculum type things. They can help you with behavior things. So I would say definitely connect with as many people as you can.
I'll answer one practical, one philosophical, I guess. I'll start with the philosophical. I'd say that no matter what, so is everyone teaching different age groups? Do we have like elementary through middle through high school?
Yeah, we have a variety, elementary.
Variety.
Well, mostly elementary, I would say elementary middle.
So I'd say the philosophical piece of advice would be to always remember that you're dealing with children. Even I'll speak to those of you who are teaching high school. Sometimes teenagers can dress like adults. They can try to act like adults. They like to swear like adults. But they're children, and so always just remembering that, like, you're getting into this profession for the kids, and no matter what happens in the classroom, loving them unconditionally, remembering that that you're a part of shaping who they are as people, just helps you to get through the tough times, because you'll have rough days. So that'd be my sort of philosophical piece of advice. And then on a more practical side, I have to 100% agree with Andrea, is that you can't do this job alone. And so right away start creating connections with your colleagues, collaborating with colleagues, just checking in, sharing both your successes and your failures, and connecting with other folks through Twitter, through other educational forums. If for no other reason, it's therapeutic, but on a practical level, it's going to really help you to shape your craft. But if you get into this profession day one thinking you're going to be perfect and thinking that you're going to have all the answers yourself, and a lot of you are those kinds of people. I know you are because you're teachers, and you know a whole heck of a lot. But if you go into the profession thinking that you're going to do this solo, that's the burnout rate. That's why it's so high. So that's my philosophical and my practical advice for you.
I'd like to piggyback off of both of those things. Make sure that when you are surrounding yourself with other educators, that you are surrounding yourself with people who are positive about the profession and about the children, because you want to surround yourself with people who are going to help build you up and build your children up as a result. You're going to experience the people who are the naysayers, that they are going to whine and complain about everything that's handed down from your State Department of Education. And those people, try to be supportive of them, but make sure that you spend the majority of your time around others who are just as positive and enthusiastic about teaching children as you are. I always tell my students that I prefer for them to strive for progress instead of perfection, and I've had to learn that myself as a teacher too. I always strive for what I call Mary Poppins perfect, which is practically perfect in every way, which gives me the leeway as a human being to make mistakes and then to learn from them. So as Brian was saying, you have to realize that you are going to make some mistakes. Some will be big, some will be small. But they are not a failure unless you don't learn from them and improve from them. So as long as you and your students are making consistent progress, that's all that you can ask for as a teacher, and you'll find greater rewards, and your students will as well. Because when there's an extremely high-pressure situation, you're stressed, they're stressed, frustration occurs, and learning does not. So if you maintain that positive attitude and the progress, not perfection model, I think you're going to have a great year.
Nobody said anything about classroom management? Maybe everybody is good with that.
Oh, as advice?
Well, what do you guys think, the students? Are you guys okay with classroom management?
So restate your question, because Lauren skipped out a little bit on us, so we couldn't hear the end of what she said. So could you question again?
Yeah, I think I lost you a little bit. So how are the students there feeling about classroom management?
So here we have a question for you guys. How are you thinking about classroom management? Anybody want to speak up? David, I saw a little hand signal. Can I get you maybe to come over here and talk a little bit closer so that they can hear you? I'm gonna make you move. I'll meet you halfway. How does that sound?
I'm nervous.
Feeling nervous. You want to talk to us a little more about that?
Because I feel like when students start going down a slippery slope, then they're gone already and then trying to get them back, I feel like it's difficult.
Yeah.
So is this gentleman student teaching right now?
Is he speaking teaching right now? Yes, I believe student teaching. No, he will be doing his level 3, so they'll be in the classroom for about 2 weeks, and he will be teaching next semester. Correct, David?
I see. So wait, I'm trying to. I sort of heard what he had said. I was trying to interpret the nonverbals. He was doing a lot of like this and so are you worried about the students kind of taking a turn for the worse and then trying to get build them back up, or what?
He said he's worried about the slippery slope, that once you lose them, that it's going to be hard to get them back. So some advice in terms of perhaps not losing them, and if you do, what do you do to make up that lost ground, I guess?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for volunteering to speak up. I think I heard you say you were nervous. That's being a teacher. You should feel nervous every once in a while. That's totally normal. I'll also say, hopefully to assuage some of your concerns, there's never, ever a point where you'll lose kids and you can never get them back. Speaking from experience, I've had periods of time where I felt like I was losing kids for weeks, and I look back on it what the heck was going on these past 2 weeks. You gain experience, and that period of time where you lose kids gets shorter with experience, so long as you're self-aware and you're reflective and you're resourceful. So teaching, just like every profession, it's a skill, and there are some teachers that are better than others, and it's not about necessarily the great flashy lessons. It's about, in my opinion, those particular skills. How resourceful are you, and how reflective are you? Because all teachers want to be good. All teachers want to manage the classroom. No teacher wants to lose their classroom for a period or a week or whatever it may be. But the problem is that the teacher who is not self-aware, is not reflective, can be losing their classroom and not even necessarily know it. Or they might know that their classroom's not really engaged, but not really have the resources to do anything about it. So as far as classroom management goes, understanding how to be honest with yourself, reflective, to know when something didn't go so well, to mark that in your lesson plan book, in big red letters, this lesson kind of sucked. And then knowing okay, so who are the people that I can go to really help me resolve this? And those skill sets right there will help you to be able to manage a classroom better than you did the day before.
I think Brian's absolutely right, and I think as you're beginning your teaching career, to really be reflective on kind of what style of classroom management is going to fit your personality, fit your kids, fit your classroom situation, and then making sure that your expectations.
Sorry, that's our really loud, obnoxious bell.
That is obnoxious, Brian. Well, sorry, that your expectations are clear and that students know what they're supposed to be doing. That being said, with consistency, if something's not working, you have to be able to change that. And I was being observed one time, and I was talking to my principal about something that I was using, a bell, that students were supposed to transition from one activity to another, and it worked really, really well for most classes, and then with this one class period, it just didn't. And she said something to me that was obvious, but it took me by surprise. She said, have you asked them about it? And I said, well, no, they're kids. I didn't ask them. But of course, they were very honest with me, and they said maybe something else would work better. So for that particular class period, we used something different, and I think because they had some input on it, and because I trust them to ask, that they were receptive to it.
I think Andrew brings up a really important point. And so when you start to lose control, I think typically what I've noticed as an educator is that if your students are doing what you want them to, there's something blocking them. It's either they don't understand or it's not the right activities. You have to be real honest with yourself and try to make a change. If you keep doing what you're doing and it's not working, it's probably not going to work the next time either. So right away trying to make a change or figuring out what's going to work and talking to your kids about it, hands down, helps tenfold. I think the lesson when I gave my students an activity that I thought would be easy, and I actually gave it to a sub, and I felt terrible afterwards because the activity went awful, and the sub was so mad the whole day because the kids weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And when I got back, I was able to ask them, you know, what's up with this? Why were you acting like this to the sub? And they just didn't get the activity. It didn't work for them. And as a sub, she didn't feel like she could change the lesson plan. But myself, then I knew that I was definitely going to have to change that big time if I ever wanted to use it again. So taking some ownership and going, okay, this isn't working. What am I going to do differently next, right? So thank you guys.
Can I add in for a moment?
Absolutely.
Reflection is absolutely key, as everybody's been saying. And one thing that I've learned in teaching students with disabilities, especially my students with autism, every behavior is an attempt to communicate. And misbehaviors are usually a failure to communicate exactly what a student wants. And it doesn't matter if your student has severe autism or if they are in need of extreme acceleration in your class and they're bored. Their behaviors are attempting to tell you something. And so you have to reflect on, okay, what were they trying to communicate to me today when everybody got off track and the entire lesson derailed? And a lot of times it just involves asking them. But reflect first. Think about what questions you're going to ask them and how to phrase them to get the responses that you need to help you better craft the next lesson. Again, it just goes with the progress model. You will consistently make progress as you reflect and as you learn to read what those miscommunications on their part through misbehaviors mean.
So do we have another question? Well, next there's Stacy.
Abby Ram, please report to the discipline office. And thank you.
All right, we got Stacy here.
It's hard for Andrea, but what specifically have you integrated with technology? What are some of the bigger projects?
Andrea, did you do that?
I think so. Some of the bigger projects we've worked on.
Technology projects that you've worked on, she's wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this year we've done a lot of teacher training. I know somebody asked that before, where did you get your technology training? And a lot of it, guys, is seeking out that information, just because I think districts can't keep up with things that are changing. But to that end, we were training second grade teachers to use their iPads. And like I said, we don't have a one-to-one initiative like Brian, but teaching some strategies to use these iPads in group work and in centers for the elementary teachers, because our focus is really literacy. So what kinds of activities are going to get those students to really dig into literacy strategies and to get them improving in their reading scores? So that was one big task. Right now we have moved over to Windows 8 as well as gotten into Office 365 with Microsoft. So we're just kind of struggling to survive over here so that everybody knows how to use things, the basic things like Microsoft Word and finding their email and getting the kids on board with all of those also. But another one of our big projects is having students create using iMovie and other movie-making software. So that's a big part of it. And I think that's really progressed because project-based learning has made a huge comeback. And I think what's different with PBL from the past is that we're really expecting kids to hit learning targets as they're creating during the project phase. So not just doing teaching at the beginning and then having kids culminate with a project, but that project itself is really where the learning happens. And so to make sure that they have mini lessons and they have other things they need in order to meet those learning targets.
You know, I was just going to add to that. I was thinking about when I started the pilot 3 years ago, I would not classify myself as a tech-savvy person. And I'm thinking about sort of the 20th century model of learning, which is very linear. You know, you've got like the knowledge source, this person who knows everything, and then they teach that to the person, and then that person kind of shows that they know it one way or another. And a lot of educators learned in this style. And so when as technology has become a bigger part of our jobs, we're forced to kind of be learners all over again. And so when I was in this position of learner, there wasn't necessarily that knowledge source because it's so new, so there wasn't that person to kind of teach me in a linear way, like, here's how you use iMovie, here's how you use the iPad, here's how you do this. And furthermore, as there became more people who were familiar with technology's changing so fast that that person who knew everything now doesn't know everything about that. And so I'd say that it also has a lot to do with just being a more dynamic learner, which means being willing to make mistakes, to play around with something without really a clear direction, to then learn from those mistakes, to sometimes reach a goal by accident, and then show someone else how you got there. So it becomes a lot more dynamic, and I think that's the way younger kids are learning a little bit more now. My high school age kids are still very linear, so they're a little more resistant to picking up technology in that way. But I certainly think that little Maggie, Katie's daughter, she's not going to know any other way to learn other than in this dynamic fashion.
So thank you so much for that, and I hate to say goodbye, but we're almost at time, and these guys might have classes that they need to do. This has been absolutely fantastic, and I thank Andrea, Brian, and Lauren for joining us. We'll have to do it again sometime. I've missed seeing you guys. So if you guys can give them a round of applause.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good luck.
Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right. Take
Bye,
care.
Katie.
Bye.
Let's see here. So thank you guys so much for being willing to join in and do the questioning. That was a lot of fun. At least it was for me. It was so great to see Brian and Andrea and Lauren, but also to hear the great advice that they had. So thanks.